For years, chronic inflammation has been linked to diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, and asthma. But now researchers realize chronic inflammation may also be at the very root of the life-threatening diseases you fear most. Cancer, heart attack, diabetes, even Alzheimer's. Is chronic inflammation silently eating away at your health? The answer can save your life.
So what is inflammation? Inflammation is the body's first aid reaction to heal itself for some type of damage. For example, what happens when you get a cut? When you get a cut, you have this big reaction. So you've been injured, the body says, whoa, I'm going to make my body go to work, bring my immune system on, turn it into this big raging fire so it can fight off the infection. And once it's killed the infection, what does it do? If it was working right, it shuts off and it's gone. You've healed the wound, no big deal. Now, what happens when the body's inflammatory process fails to shut down? Then it becomes chronic. And chronic inflammation is more like this. It's this low-grade, continuous process where the body can't decide if it should be upset with you or not. And so for that reason, it sort of stays on this low burn, but it's always on. Now, there's no infection to kill. Or if there is one, it's a low-grade infection. So what does it do? In order to keep itself busy, it begins to attack its own tissues. Your own healthy body parts begin to get injured. And unlike a bruise or a scab, where you actually wanted a raging fire to protect you, the inflammation is below the skin surface, and it's not helping you. It's invisibly hurting you. Now, what causes inflammation? Well, one of the biggest causes of inflammation is fat. Fat increases inflammation in the blood, and if you eat a high-fat meal, it could actually make you a candidate for some of this inflammation. Now, how can I tell if you're eating too much fat? I decided to run a little experiment and to test my theory on one of our viewers. Tanya is joining with. Hey, Tanya, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
So, Tanya very bravely agreed to volunteer for this experiment. Now, what's your diet typically like?
Healthy fats, fish and vegetables, fruits, all the good stuff.
You were taught well by your mom.
Yes,
Congratulations. So, and we tested your blood before you had a meal. And here we are taking a little bit of blood from you. And you're happily uninflamed setting,
yes,
getting some blood taken. And what we wanted to do was to test this blood to see how much fat was in the blood, how much triglyceride was in the blood. And at the time, how'd you feel?
I felt fine.
No issues?
No issues.
Okay. Then began the experiment. We fed Tanya a very typical meal for an American, a high-fat, 900-calorie meal, which is not hard to get pretty much anywhere in America, right? Do these look familiar to you, any of you? Maybe some of you may have tasted these things: pizza, burgers, ice cream, donuts, French fries, all the good foods, right? They're all there. Now this, by the way, should only be done under strict scientific guidelines, yes, by a scientific research team. You should never eat these foods without that being present. This is, again, a very delicately run experiment that could have been hazardous to her health. But with appropriate supervision, we did the testing, subjected you to eating these foods, and after 900 calories of a fat-laden meal, which is, by the way, over twice the recommended amount of food that adults should have of fat in an entire day, but still we did it over the time, we checked your triglycerides again. And the second time we checked the bloods, we actually noticed what had happened, which is that across the board, you had changes. Your triglycerides increased 40%.
Oh my God.
40%. There was a raging civil war inside of your body, and those chemicals were beginning to ignite and burn inside of you, and it causes sludging of the blood. And when we actually looked at the serum, the top layer of the blood, that's what you looked like before. You see, I can see through there, and it's pretty clear?
Yes.
Okay.
Looks great.
Now, you go ahead and hold that.
Yes.
Let me show you what the serum looked like afterwards.
Oh God.
You got cream in your blood. Imagine, that's from one meal.
Oh God, that's
Just
horrific.
one meal. What happens if you ate like that all the time? The inflammatory chemicals in the body start to turn on. They start to send out the message that there's a war going on in here. We got to fight off the saturated fat. And if you've got these problems, then with this cream running in there, all the other things that we talk about start happening. The irritating side effects of inflammation continue to irritate all the different parts of the body, sometimes far removed from the fat that you actually ate. So how do you know if you have chronic inflammation? Well, there's a $25 blood test. This is a new test that's available, that's being done by a lot of doctors. Now, you'll hear of it sometimes. It's called C-reactive protein, or CRP. And as inflammation increases, you're going to see CRP levels increase in your blood as well. And these doctors now are using this high-tech sensitivity scale to figure out whether you're at high risk for heart attacks. And again, it's a new idea that's starting to take over a lot of how we practice medicine. Now, how do you know if you're at risk? If your CRP level is under 1, you have a very low risk of having a problem. If you're at an average level, which is between 1 and 3, then I wish you were lower, but it's okay. If you're high, over 3, I get worried. Because if your CRP is high, the chance of you having a heart attack is twice as high as if it's not.
Okay.
So I hope you don't eat more of those meals, and I'm sorry to have subjected you to that.
It's okay.
And
It's
again,
for scientific purposes.
only. Thank you. Tanya, thank you very much.
Thank you.
When we
Thank
come
you.
back, you can stop your inflammation.